Hello, everyone. Welcome to episode 145 of the J Situation Podcast. I'm recording this on January 10th, 2023. How are all you wonderful folks doing? Man, Hail Mary this week for sure. It's a pretty late night tonight. It's okay, though. Been so incredibly busy, but I do need to get you this podcast. Dude, I think SHOT Show's next week. We got all kinds of stuff going on, so man, we got to get this information to you. We just had a review, so we're going to do it, and it's going to be great. Yeah, so we're going to talk about the Nomad on 5.56, that data that was just released. We'll do that technical discussion. We're going to talk about the HK MK23 with the Knight's Armament silencer, and I'm even going to talk about a special new PEW Science member who was the recipient of the first ever PEW Science sticker pack. That's right. What? That's real? Yeah, no, totally is. So we're going to try to get through this episode rather fast today, even though there's a lot to talk about. Yeah, it's a speed run. That's right. This episode of the podcast is brought to you by High-End Armament Technology, a dealer of exactly that, high-end arms and accessories. They have significant longevity in the machine gun and the NFA game, as well as significant expertise in both the procurement and operation of night vision, thermal optics, and infrared sighting systems. Robert and his crew have decades of experience and actual knowledge of the gear, so if there's a weapon system that's rare and you're having trouble locating it, or maybe if you need to get into night vision, maybe you need to get into thermal or even transferable machine guns, they are a great place to call. Check them out at highendarms.com, on Instagram at highendarms, and they have a Facebook page, which you guessed it, is also High-End Arms. I hope they can help you out if you need it. Tell them Jay sent you. The J Situation Podcast is also proudly sponsored by Silencer Shop. You can use their kiosk, do your fingerprints and photos electronically, and in turn, you cut down on errors, you simplify your silencer purchasing process, you get a money-back guarantee. It's great. No transfer fees, no paperwork errors, just you and your silencer with no drama. It truly is silencer ownership simplified. That's right. And there are some things to save you a little bit of money in the podcast show notes. If you're needing to buy some ammo, check out True Shot Gun Club out of Arizona. Use the code word PEW Science to save $20 off your A-Zone membership to get free shipping on the ammo you buy from them for a whole calendar year. Click the link in the show notes to go to their website and buy stuff. It'll help the podcast. Same thing goes with Magpul. Click the link there to go to Magpul and shop and use code PSTEN, that's PS10, to get $10 off your order of $100 or more at magpul.com. Stockpile mags, be a man. And lastly, and most importantly, this podcast is brought to you by PEW Science, pushing the silencer industry forward one test at a time. Visit pewscience.com for the suppression rating. It's the simplest and the most accurate hearing safe ratings for your suppressed small arms. It's based on true human inner ear response of the entire gunshot from before combustion takes place all the way until all the combustion is gone. We're the only ones doing it. And it's on the website. That's right. PEW Science is the home of the silencer sound standard. 7 sections. The most in-depth and accurate silencer data and analysis in the world. Check it out at pewscience.com. You can support this podcast, PEW Science, and all the testing I do for you by joining with a membership at pewscience.com. You can. And you can also hit the donate button there on the review page or the podcast page. Every little bit helps. And something that's free, never costs you anything. Go ahead and give this podcast a good rating on Spotify or iTunes, and you can help to normalize the use of suppressed small arms, normalize the education, put a silencer in every home. That's right. Like I said, and I alluded to in the very beginning, we have 3 topics prepared for you today. Topic 1, sound signature review 6100. The Dead Air Nomad-30 first generation on the 5.56 Mark 18. Okay, this is the technical discussion. We just released this review for you folks last week, and the technical discussion is now. Topic 2, the Knight's Armament Mark 23 silencer on the HK MK23 offensive combat handgun. Yeah, das ist gut. Yeah, good golly, Miss Molly. So amazing. Is it special? Is this a special combination? Yeah, you betcha it is. I'll describe some shooting experience. Really, I'll just, give some first impressions. It'll be good. And topic 3, PEW Science and podcast merch coming soon. Maybe not soon, but one podcast listener did get some for Christmas. He did. And hey, now he's a PEW Science member. Big shout out to this gentleman and his wife who reached out to try to surprise him. It worked. We made a Christmas miracle happen. How about that? Okay. Let's move into topic 1 at a time of 5 minutes and 36 seconds. Oh, that's pretty good time. A decent time, at least. Not the worst, not the best. Okay. Topic 1, Sound Signature Review 6100, the Dead Air Nomad-30 first gen on the 5.56 Mark 18. Technical discussion. Oh, man, so it's pretty late. I just had a really front-loaded week this week, and I thought about waiting to record the podcast, till tomorrow, but if I did that, I would be behind on some other stuff. So no, we got to do it. And I was like, oh man. So I just ate some Chick-fil-A, God's chicken. I just had Chick-fil-A. It's so good. I just had a lemonade too. That diet lemonade, man. I like the grilled chicken nuggets with those waffle fries. And then the lemonade there. Oh my goodness gracious. And I was actually about to fall asleep. So I took some pre-workout. And my face is really tingling right now, which might have been a mistake considering I do have to sleep tonight. But I'm in that zone of incredibly tired, but now I have, stimulant in my system. So yeah, it's weird. This is a big review. That's right. We have returned to Dead Air Nomad-land, and this time on 5.56. And as is tradition so far, the Mark 18 is the test host. That's right, for 5.56. So now, this is the first gen Nomad, okay, just like was first tested on 308 in Sound Signature Review 643. Okay, we went on to test the Nomad TI on 308 in Sound Signature Review 644, which was the next review, right? And in those articles on 308, it was explained that the first gen Nomad, we were basically treating it as a lower bound for performance of the Nomad system. And we were doing that due to the improvements that took place over successive Nomad generations. Okay. Therefore, the Nomad TI data that we presented there was to be considered an upper bound. Okay, so your performance of your Nomad is bounded on the lower end by the Nomad-30 first gen, and on the upper end by the Nomad TI, which is considered to be the same as the updated Nomad-30. Okay, that is the method that we chose to pursue for the 308 data, and now this 5.56 review is no different. Same song, different verse. Okay, the data you see is a lower bound, and you'll get upper bound performance data later. Okay, sound good? Okay, now, there is one thing I should tell you before we get into it, though. You should know the gap in performance between the Nomad-30 first gen and the Nomad TI on the full-size 308 bolt gun, that performance gap that you saw before, that gap is bigger than on the SBR Mark 18. 5.56. That's a function of both barrel length and cartridge. Okay, so don't expect the same type of increase in performance going from this Nomad-30 first gen to the Nomad TI. Don't expect that same type of increase on the Mark 18. The cartridge is different and the weapon system is different. Okay, so things don't scale like that. All right, so if things did scale like that, this whole thing would take way less time, wouldn't it? Like we wouldn't have to. It'd be way easier. I wouldn't be up so late. That's right. I'd be done with a lot of this now. Excuse me. So back in 2021, when I released the Nomad 308 data, and again, like in this current review, in review 100, when I released 5.56 data, I did get questions as to how can a user tell a Nomad is the old or new generation? And they also, people ask me, what are the changes? How can you tell, and what are the changes? What is it? because because I gave you this performance difference, and on 308 it was kind of significant. So people are like, whoa, wait a minute, like I need to know what's changed. Well, you folks are actually in luck today, because the guy who designed the silencer, he jumped in on Reddit, on the Reddit thread I made last week, and he responded publicly to a user with some information. I happened to see what he wrote later, because he didn't respond to me. He just responded to someone else that was asking. So I ended up seeing it later when I was responding to another comment. I was like, oh. So I think this might be the first and only public description of the exact changes in the Nomad. So I'm gonna read what he wrote verbatim. Okay, I'm gonna read it on the podcast verbatim right now. Okay, so what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna read his words. Again, these are not my words. I'm quoting somebody. Okay, these are not my words. These are the words of the silencer designer. Starting now. All Gen 1 Nomad production ended November 2019. Gen 2 has the following. 1. Raised tool features on the back. 2. Larger blast chamber with some baffles getting some tiny changes in spacing. 3. Clips in cones are all aligned rather than the quote-unquote mostly randomized as Gen 1 had. 4. Blast baffle and baffle number 2 were beefed up for harder use on ARs. 5. C-Series Cerakote that won't burn off like the old H-Series. Net changes yielded some great suppression improvements over this first gen, along with great consistency across many calibers, a very overlooked aspect of suppressor performance. Okay, and that is the end of his quote. That's the end of what he said. Okay, so it's interesting. Right, that's interesting. So, longtime followers of PEW Science and listeners to this podcast, along with longtime followers and really readers of silencer information in general, will note some interesting things about those statements, right? Excuse me, hold on. Because I'm telling you, I ate Chick-fil-A, okay, so there's going to be that. He's burping. None of that stuff that I just read you, none of that was ever confirmed before, publicly, right? So this can now be considered officially confirmed. And because of that, I might even add this to the Nomad and Nomad TI articles on the website for people's reference. I'm going to wait a bit before I do that, and I'll probably do it when I release the Nomad TI 556 data. But I didn't want to give you folks that info. Well, I'm sorry, I did want to give you folks this info, because those changes aren't really small, right? Those are pretty big changes that he describes there. And I will say, and I think I said this before when I first spoke about the Nomads on 308, manufacturers do often make performance improvements and changes during a product's life. It's pretty common, It is very unusual to have details like this, though. So I'm happy to be able to distribute that information to folks on this podcast. I will update the articles eventually to reflect those exact changes. And big thanks to Todd McGee for telling people about them. Okay? He didn't have to do that. So that's probably appreciated by a lot of people, and it's definitely appreciated by me and the state of practice. That's I can tell you. So I will say there is something he said in his last statement. He was saying about people overlooking consistency as an aspect of silencer performance. I concur. But that's why PEW Science doesn't overlook it. Okay, because I think people should talk about it, which I do in many reviews and on this podcast. Okay, I talked about it in the Nomad review, didn't I? It's in there. Google the word consistent or consistency on pewscience.com domain. You'll find when I say it. It's a great thing about the website. You can search it. It's awesome. So now that you folks know what was tested and what was not tested, let's talk about the silencer and the test results. now that we know what's what, and okay, it's important to know. So the Nomad-30 is a 30 caliber silencer. It's in the name, and it's the 1 3/4 inch diameter Dead Air offering in that caliber. Okay, this before when they released this, there weren't a lot of those, right? There weren't a lot. There was the Q stuff, but there weren't a lot of 1 3/4 inch offerings yet on the market. We've talked about the baffle technology in the Nomad a lot on the podcast over the years. I have a description in the review summary at the end of the review for you to read. It's basically broadened flat cones with annular space, right? It's like an Omega baffle crossed with a Hyperion geometry, crossed with a plate washer or something, because it's all flat and weird. But yeah, I say weird because it is. It has some weird parts to it. If you look at it, it's interesting. I think it's kind of neat. I really do think it's kind of neat. I think the baffle's neat. I think it works pretty well, and it's highly efficient. It's so efficient, actually, that you end up performing pretty well for the silencer's length on its main diameter tasks. It's or the main diameter, the primary diameter, the major diameter. The 30 caliber diameter, the 308 bolt gun stuff. You end up performing so well for its length. Now, something should be said when you add a bunch more baffles to the stack. Like when you create a Nomad L from a Nomad, you do increase suppression, but it doesn't scale exactly like you think it would. And the back pressure does ramp up pretty severely. And we covered that in the Nomad L 308 review. By the way, if you do want to go and find that on the website and check it out, and then go find the podcast episode where I talk about the Nomad L with the technical discussion, you'll see I do discuss that. You can find all these things. You can find all this with the rankings table on the website and the search function on the website. Okay, so use those things. It'll help you. Now, back to the baffle efficiency. One of the cool things about a Nomad baffle is that it's able to be efficient in multiple combustion and flow regimes. It's pretty good. And you'll see more Nomad data from PEW Science this year in a variety of combustion regimes. For example, like 300 blackout, subsonic 300 blackout. That'll be good to see. One of the things the Nomad has going for it is the coaxial chambers in each baffle. It's really efficient. It's efficient for high pressure. Long duration, it's sufficient for long duration flow and low pressure and short duration flow. There's a lot of efficiency in the Nomad. What happens when we go into high pressure, smaller diameter flow, and then we chop the barrel in half? What happens then? What happens when we go 5.56 Mark 18 with this overboard 30 caliber silencer, even with its efficient baffles? That's this review. Okay, so that's the data we're going to look at now. Okay, I'm trying to set the stage for you to help you understand what you're looking at and what you're not looking at. Okay, so this is review 6100 on PEWScience.com. This is the 100th article. I haven't made a big to-do about that or anything, but I do want to say this is 100 articles that I've written for you, and I think that's a lot, and it's kind of cool that we hit triple digits. And that's all I'm going to say about that because we don't have a lot of time. Okay, so I'm going to open up the member review here on PEWScience.com. You can follow along at home if you want. You can also open the free review too. It'll be just fine for you to follow the discussion. Yet you don't have to worry that you're not a PEW Science member. If you're not, I'm not going to alienate you. I promise. Okay. So go ahead and pause this and get the review open if you need to. Okay, go ahead and pause it. Okay, you back? Are you back? Did you pull up the review? It's great to have you back, sir, ma'am. Okay, now pulling up the review 6100. Bottom line up front, 27.9 composite suppression rating, 26.3 at the muzzle, 21.4 at the ear. Okay, interesting. It's like that meme with the girl on the computer. Interesting. I don't know. It must be from some show or something. I don't know what show that is. It's like, I feel like I think it's some show that like kids watch, but like I wasn't a kid when it came out, so I didn't watch it because I was older. So I don't know what the meme came from, but it's funny. She's like drinking a Coke or something. She's like looking at the computer screen. She's like, interesting. No, it is though. I can tell you that this is very interesting without even looking at any of the data. Because when I see this, seeing the Nomad's performance at the muzzle and ear, it immediately reminded me of another 30 caliber silencer on the Mark 18, the Trash Panda. It's weird, right? It is kind of weird. Hold that thought though. But that's the first thing that I kind of looked at, and it jumped out to me. It probably jumped out to a lot of you too, but hold that thought, okay? Go ahead and scroll down in the review. You can go ahead and you can scroll down past table 1, and we can look at the waveforms starting in figure 1. That's right. Here are the silencer's fingerprints, as is tradition. You have the full time scale shown in figure 1A, that's on the left there, in which you can see the entire combustion blowdown. You can see the entire combustion blowdown followed by the bolt closing after each shot is complete. That's right. Then in figure 1B, you of course have the zoomed in view of the early time signature, and I'm showing you just shot 1 and shot 2 in that figure so you can see what's going on there. Okay, and keep in mind, if you're following at home or you haven't seen these reviews, you can click on these figures to make them bigger. A bigger figure will come up in a box there on the website, and you'll be able to see more detail. Okay, now I'm gonna kind of look at that closely because it's really interesting, and this particular fingerprint is super cool. It's super cool. The Nomad fingerprint, like many silencer-designed fingerprints, is very unique. It really is. And it's unique just like you. That's right. Your fingerprints are unique. And so are the fingerprints of silencers. Yeah, so and what's really interesting, some people have special parts of their fingerprints they're very special and really easily discernible. Like you can't miss them. Okay. Sometimes people have, for example, like a double thumb loop on their thumb, like it's weird, like double loops. They kind of nest. It's like a yin yang kind of. If any of you are in law enforcement, or maybe you fingerprint a lot of people for NFA items, or you know about fingerprints, sometimes, I don't know, people collect stamps. Maybe they collect fingerprints. I don't know. That'd be weird. Okay, that's like a little serial killer. I collect skin. No, what? No, that's weird. Sorry. I just thought these weird jokes. I'm just saying, if you're, I'm delirious. I'm so tired. If you know a lot about fingerprints, like you might see that a lot. You might see these unique things that people could have that are just, unique to them. All right. It's super interesting. Well, the Nomad has something like that. It does. And you saw it in the 308 reviews, didn't you? You did. If you remember, you saw it with the Nomad-30 and you saw it again with a Nomad TI. And guess what? You see it again with 5.56. And what is it? Did anyone read the article? I say it in the article. Did you really read it? Because I did say it. No, it's okay if you didn't read it. I'll tell you. It's in Research Note 1. It's in Research Note 1, homie. It is. If you scroll down, if you look at Figure 1B, the pressure in early time of shot 1 and shot 2, you can click and make it bigger if you want. The internal combustion, when that muzzle blast enters the blast chamber and progresses through the silencer, what happens? What happens even before the muzzle blast exits the silencer? You get that high frequency oscillation there. You see that signature there? Textbook Nomad. That's textbook Nomad, guys. Look at 29.9 milliseconds in Figure 1B. Look, I say it in the text. See how shot 1 and shot 2 are laying on top of each other like that? You see that? It's wild, right? It's totally wild. It happens every time. It happens every time. And then if you click the link I have in there to review 644 of the Nomad TI on 308, if you go to figure 8A in that review, I overlaid the Nomad-30 and the Nomad TI 308 tests in that review back then, and you see the same type of thing. Nomad's gonna nomad, dude. You can't hide it. It's really interesting, right? And so remember last podcast when I talked about different features of Q rifle silencer fingerprints in different flow regimes. And I remarked that we can identify a Q rifle silencer just from the signature fingerprint without knowing it's a Q silencer. Same thing with a Nomad. Okay? Same thing. Isn't that crazy? Yeah, it's crazy, right? So different fingerprint features just like people. How do we know the data's real? It's like, that this is, because I'm looking at the silencer signatures like this in this detail, that's why I get a kick out of when people doubt the efficacy. They're like, how do we know that data's real? He's not giving us YouTube videos. And it's like, well, one way you know the data's real is reading and looking at the waveforms. Not even the dang manufacturers know some of this. They didn't know. Some of them don't even realize the power. I mean, they know now if they read PEW Science, but most don't read it, so they won't care. But it's true, it's real, and you can't hide it. Can you imagine? And you might be thinking, like, I might tell you that, and you think, oh well, that could have been any silencer, Jay. That could have been anything. That's just a coincidence. You might think, so So then you might think, well, are there other similarities? Like, well, that's really early time, Jay. Is there anything else? That's early time. Are there other similarities in this test to previous tests? Like after the gas actually gets out of the silencer, you may wonder that. And in response, I might say, yes, friend, actually there are. But wait, there's more. That's right. No, there is though. There's definitely some FRP pressure features that are similar, so you can take a look at that. You can see those for yourself. Also, check out the impulse waveforms. Again, keep in mind we changed combustion regimes to 5.56 and we cut the barrel in half. But still, check this out. The impulse history at the muzzle is very similarly shaped. It is. It's pretty wild when you look at it. And one thing that happens on the Mark 18 that does not happen on the 20-inch 308 bolt action is some pretty fast decay in impulse space. Pretty fast decay occurs, and you get this dump earlier in time, dropping impulse during FRP in a pretty sharp way. It drops pretty sharply, and it does so much faster than in the 308 test. Okay, and I think it's that expedient impulse decay that really caught my eye. I notated it in the review, and it could be that the higher pressure of the Mark 18 barrel is doing this with the Nomad baffle, because what this actually ends up doing is, although you do see a bigger pressure pulse during the first shot, it's truncating it such that it's really not that much more severe than subsequent shots are to the ear in the inner ear modeling, to bystanders. So I think part of that is that fast impulse decay, and that's something I'm looking into. And if it's true, if that's one of the primary mechanisms, it might be, this is important, it might be that the high pressure performance of the Nomad baffle directly translates across cartridges even with the Mark 18 in the direct thread configuration. It's a pretty big statement for that to happen and be proven scientifically here. Okay, what that highlights, I think, in plain English, is how the Nomad baffle is both advanced and simple. Okay, so it's advanced. This is my way of describing this. I think it's advanced because of all the stuff we've talked about in all the reviews about the Nomad baffle, but it's simple because it doesn't have annular entrance as sensitive as the Helios QD, for example. Okay, so it's a really interesting case study to compare those two silencers, actually, when you compare the two. And I should really do a 308 and 556 comparison, like a four-way shootout or something. It's an interesting thought to do something like that, because there's some similarities and differences that I think could be really interesting to examine. So back to the data. Sorry, a little detour just describing that, but I think that's important. So back to the data here. Right. So you see a pretty fast initial slope in the impulse waveforms, don't you? That's important. And you have a pretty latent bolt closing signature, right? So those should be two key data indicators. We're looking at a reduced back pressure scenario, when compared with dedicated bore 556, right? And that should be pretty apparent to you in the data right away. If you're just looking at this, even if you don't read the review, if you just look at the pictures, you should say, oh, interesting. Flow rate might be higher. Okay, probably higher than the dedicated 556 silencer, dedicated bore 556 silencer, that is. Interesting, okay? Now, this is important because of the comparisons we'll talk about later. Again, table that discussion for now. Just like I told you to hold that thought about the trash panda, remember? Hold that thought about that comparison. We'll get to it. So one thing you'll notice is how consistent the Nomad-30 behaves on the Mark 18 compared to the SAM NS. That's right. Compared to the SAM NS, it's pretty consistent. So go check out review 692 for SAM NS Mark 18 data. The Nomad is more advanced. It is more advanced than the SAM NS. The secondary combustion really has nowhere to go in a Sandman, so it comes out the front. That you pay for that. The Nomad-30 can deal with it much better. I make a point about that in Research Note 2 in this article. Remember, guys, we're overboard, right? So we're way bigger than we need to be for the cartridge. What happens when you significantly overbore a silencer and shoot it on a Mark 18? Usually, it's chaos. And we've proven that. We've shown that in the waveforms, but not with the Nomad. Not with the Helios QD. But chaos with the Sandman. Chaos with the Trash Panda. It's interesting, right? The coaxial geometry giving more flow paths works. It works very well on short barrel 556 apparently. And I thought that was interesting for consistency. We talk about consistency a lot. Read Research Note 2. I talk about that in the article, okay? Now, as I mentioned, the back pressure of the Nomad-30 is lower than from dedicated 556 silencers, okay? And we see this in the waveform indicators at the muzzle. And if you're a PEW Science member and you have access to the at-ear waveforms, you can see the combustion at the shooter's ear. Okay, I'm going to scroll down. I'm in the member review right now, so I can look at that. It's really not, in the pressure space, it's really not showing any crazy rarefaction, which is one telltale sign you aren't super restrictive, right? You're not like a Saker or a Turbo or a Polonium. Remember what the at-ear pressure waveforms look like with a Saker or a Turbo or Polonium? You know what you see in that? Remember, you can look at it. It's I don't even have to tell. I don't have to like convince you. You've already been convinced if you look at the waveforms. They're pretty objective, dude. Like they're in color. You can see them. So you're not getting that with the Nomad. So that right away, you should be a little more comfortable, at least with the flow rate. But we're not out of the woods yet, okay? And members will see some very important things to note about what makes a silencer loud at the shooter's ear, and it's important to understand those things. It's not just the ejection port signature, it's the muzzle signature too, okay? They're together. It's how they combine. That's important, okay? And that brings me to, when talking about that brings me to the overall comparisons in the review. Let's go ahead and go to those. And now you can start thinking about the Trash Panda again. Okay, see, I didn't forget. You can start thinking about the Trash Panda again. If you look at figure 5 in the bar chart, if you scroll down, you can see the Nomad outperforming the SAM NS at the muzzle. Okay, that's pretty clear. You know why that happens. I think everyone knows why that happens now. It's due to the technology in the silencer. We've discussed this ad nauseum. If you're new to PEW Science, you might want to look back and listen to some of the other episodes, or read some of the other articles, or read this article. Okay. Now, a comparison in the review that is not as easy to reconcile for some of you as the SAM NS versus the Trash Pan, or I'm sorry, the SAM NS versus the Nomad-30. Something that's a little bit interesting is the suppression rating at the shooters there in the muzzle are a little higher with the Trash Panda than the Nomad-30. The performance is very, very similar, and it's almost identical on the Mark 18. That's pretty wild. It's pretty wild. The Trash Panda isn't as consistent, though. It's not as consistent, and it's not as advanced geometrically. But what it lacks in alternate flow paths, it apparently makes up for in the expansion volume for the 5.56 jet. That's right. On the Mark 18, it does provide that benefit, and you wouldn't think it would work as well as it does, but it just so happens it does. The Trash Panda data on the Mark 18 taught us so much about short barrel 5.56 suppression. It really did. It showed that things that don't work as well for very long duration combustion on 308 can still work with 5.56. Okay? Remember, go back to episode 1 of this podcast with Chris Graham from YHM. He mentions this in different words. YHM figured it out a long time ago. AAC figured it out a long time ago. A lot of people figured out how to make 5.56 silencers super simple and work a long, long time ago. 5.56 is not 308. Say it with me. Different. That's right. No. But the fact that the Trash Panda works as well as it does on the Mark 18 is super interesting to me. It's a real case. You know what it really is when you get right down to brass tacks here? It's a real case of brute force volume just working out. It just works out with the expansion ratios necessary for the thing to perform. And so when you look at how the Nomad absolutely trounces the Trash Panda on supersonic 308 on a hunting rifle, and then you look at how these two silencers are neck and neck on the Mark 18, you're like, what? Some people are like, wait, huh? Like, they're like, wait a minute. What's going on? Well, it can be very confusing because the expansion of the 5.56 jet into the volume of the Trash Panda is one of those things that I think leads some people to believe that silencer volume and suppression performance always increase together. A lot of people might think that based on if they just look at the 5.56 data. They start to equate volume to suppression with all these make-believe metrics. The fact of the matter is, volume is absolutely awesome if it's utilized correctly. Okay? And it just so happens that the volume of the Trash Panda works really well for a 5.56 jet from an SBR, and not so well for a 7.62 jet from a hunting rifle. Okay? And that is due to the duration of combustion and how long pressure is above a certain threshold. Okay? That's why. 308 overwhelms the silencer. The Mark 18 doesn't overall, except for the fact that the large bore doesn't tame the secondary combustion later in the shot string, so you get that erratic stuff, and that's because the silencer just isn't able to deal with it because of its geometry. And that, my friends, is the difference between the Trash Panda and the Nomad. Okay? The Nomad gives you decent volumetric expansion for the jet, and it can tame the insane event from the Mark 18 using the alternate flow pads. The Trash Panda tries a brute force method, okay? It's completely different. And the performance comparison just happens to end up being a wash on the Mark 18. And with the PEW Soft, you see the anomalies, but overall, the important part here is the suppression rating at the muzzle and the ear are close. And that's a big deal because that's the final answer for a lot of you, okay, on this host. Now, what that doesn't mean, okay, it doesn't mean that it's really a wash technically on all 5.56 guns, okay, because it just so happens it's a wash on the Mark 18. But as we move into further 5.56 testing, we'll see how it all shakes out. This relationship might change when the barrel length changes. Okay, because we are changing the combustion regime. That's right. Remember, we're in half the barrel length of the Mark 18 or the 5.56 right now. 10.3 inches is not right. That boy ain't right. Yeah, it's not good. Okay, so you might be asking yourself after you look at this data. I mean, it's one thing I actually kind of thought about. You might ask yourself, why can't we get the damn shooter's ear suppression rating higher with the Nomad on this gun? Why can't we get that shooter's ear suppression rating higher? When, or you might think, why does the Trash Panda and even the YHM Turbo having more back pressure produce a shooter's ear suppression rating that is close to that of the Nomad on the same gun? Why? Why is it happening? Why can the back pressure be so different? And the shooter's ear suppression rating is so similar. Why? Why would that happen? It's a really good question, right? It's a really good question. Well, I'll tell you why. It's because the pressure pulses are happening pretty early out of the ejection port, and the muzzle signature matters a lot too. And you just can't get a high enough flow rate with the majority of these silencers, even the 30 caliber ones. You can't get a high enough flow rate to drop that ejection port signature significantly. So the muzzle can get quiet. You can get the muzzle quiet. The flow rate can increase when you make that bore bigger. Okay? And so you can drop that ejection port signature a little, but you aren't going to work a miracle until you ramp up your flow rate significantly with this untuned host, with this Mark 18. You're just not. Okay? Until you really do something with the flow rate at the same time you do something with the muzzle suppression, until you start to tackle them together, it's just going to take a combination. You have to achieve balance. It's the only way. And the best balance so far that we've seen, is going to be achieved by the OSS stuff, the Huxworks stuff. Specifically in recent history, the Flow 556K from Huxworks. That's it. You're really going to have to accelerate your flow rate to the point you aren't able to build a long duration pressure pulse out of the ejection port, and you have to do it early. You got to do it in early time. To get high early time flow rate from a silencer, you just have to really pursue radical design. And the Nomad is not like that. It's not. It has some designs that are parts that are neat for other reasons, but in this respect, it's not. It's a higher performance silencer, but it's not a super high flow rate design. It's just not. It's not a high flow rate design like the Huxworks geometry is. And it doesn't have a vented end cap system. I guess there's an e-brake you can get, but I haven't tested the e-brake. I should. What's an e-brake? It's a vented end cap. Okay. So yeah, this is the Nomad on 5.56. And there's more info in the review. Okay, you should check it out if you haven't. I hope it gives you context. I hope this gives you context for how the Nomad performs relative to other silencers on the Mark 18, because that's important for you to know, I think. Considering the proliferation of the silencer, like I talked about last time, I was excited for this review because I was excited to show you context. There's a lot of speculation. Now, when you see the chart, no one was surprised. People saw the data. I saw on social media. People are like, oh, okay, that makes sense. I'm like, yeah, it definitely does. It totally makes sense. From people's experience, that's for sure. Isn't that interesting? It's cool. So when you think about the Nomad, it's about like a trash panda on the Mark 18. It's sort of like a turbo. Okay, but you're gonna get less gas in your face in later time, probably, with the Nomad. But you're gonna get a similar shooter's ear suppression rating, and for a 30 caliber silencer, it's hanging. It is hanging. The trash panda surprised people, and you should probably have the same impression of the Nomad. But you do get the added benefit of more consistency with the Nomad due to the advancements of the system. You do. And that's 5.56 Nomad performance in a nutshell. Okay? It's basically a trash panda that's more consistent. Interesting, right? Isn't that cool? Isn't it cool how the designer of the silencer said that the Nomad was consistent, and then you see that PEW Science data supports when you go from Nomad to Nomad TI in the 308 that happened, and it's almost like the manufacturers are self-validating the efficacy of PEW Science data because they're confirming the technical highlights that I've already given over the years. Imagine that. Topic 2 at a time of 46 minutes and 31 seconds. Oh my God. We are doing so great on time. Let me get a drink of water. Man. I felt better prepared for this podcast than the last one, but also I am so tired that I can't afford to ad-lib as much, go off on these crazy tangents that I didn't plan on talking about like I sometimes want to do. I did want to go a little ham on this one, but I just don't have the energy or the time. So we're going to finish on time today, and maybe we have some fun next time. Topic 2. The Knight's Armament Mark 23 silencer on the HK Mark 23. The offensive combat handgun. Guys, this is great. It's so special. And I'm going to give you my first impressions. Okay, these are my first impressions of the system, and let me make a note so I have administrative note really quick. Let me save that. Sometimes I take notes about what I've talked about, what I haven't talked about, just so I can come back to that. Okay, this Mark 23. I love this gun, guys. Oh, and by the way, the Mark 23 silencer, if you look, I have it right here in my hand. If you look at the model, it says mod.mark23/USP. So this thing is intended to be used on the HK Mark 23 or the HK USP 45 tactical. Okay, and this gun, this Mark 23, I also have it right here. Oh, man. You know what I do when I get into gun on the podcast? Okay, I'm going to eject the mag. You hear that? That's the 12-round magazine being ejected by the ambidextrous magazine release at the base of the trigger guard there per HK usual. So there's that. Right now I have it. It's actually cocked and locked right now. It's a double action, single action, hammer fired 45 caliber combat handgun. I'm going to disengage the safety. I'm going to decock the weapon. And the decocker, you know what? I'm looking at my auto recording software and I see a pressure spike with a decay. It looks like a dang gunshot sound. Oh my God. He sees the waveforms everywhere. Yeah, that's because that was an impulsive noise. It looked like a silencer waveform. That was awesome. Yeah, so the decocker does let you know that you decock the gun as it springs back and tries to take your thumb off. As is tradition. Yeah, the HK Mark 23. So now it is decocked, hammered down. I am going to pull the slide back. I'm going to put the slide release up there. Okay, so I have it. The slide is open. The slide release is engaged there. I have the thread protector on the barrel right now. It is a little bit dirty from me shooting it this weekend. I am going to close the slide. Oh, that's satisfying. That's satisfying. Now I am going to pull the trigger in single action mode here. Crisp and beautiful. Okay. Put the magazine in here. All right. I'm going to set it down. The Mark 23, ladies and gentlemen. I love this gun. I really do, and it's really not that big for what it is. And those are my honest first impressions as a Mark 23 owner, I will say. You know, SIG and HK handguns are my favorite. More specifically, SIG and HK combat handguns are my favorite. And even more specifically, SIG and HK hammer-fired handguns are my favorite. Okay, like the SIG P226, it's amazing. Everyone should have one. The HK P30L, the USP, amazing. Now, this Mark 23, it's goated with the sauce. Goated with the sauce, as the kids say, man. It's, my goodness gracious. I'm holding it. I can't help it. Oh, man, yes. Feels good in the hand. You know, as is tradition, with a gun like this, I made sure its first shots were suppressed. I did. In fact, I put about 75 rounds through the gun on a it was a Sunday mid-morning. They were all suppressed. All the shots were suppressed. I suppressed the weapon with the Knight's Armament Mark 23 silencer. And my initial thoughts are pretty comprehensive, but I'm going to give, just in the interest of time and brevity, I'm going to give you my high-level thoughts first, and we can talk about it later. Okay, so far from that first outing with this particular combo, because I had never shot the Mark 23 with this silencer before. You know, it's very rare to be able to do that, okay? And that's basically what I have now. This is the setup. So I will say the recoil mechanics are excellent. It shoots how you think it should shoot. Okay? It doesn't seem like you're shooting a pistol with a silencer. Okay? It seems like you're shooting a suppressed system. Okay? It really goes together. You know, that's my quick qualitative impression. The system seems correct to me, okay? Now, is that opinion influenced by the fact that I know this silencer and the piston I'm using with it was designed for the weapon? Yeah, maybe a little bit. Maybe I'm a little biased on my technical opinion because I know so much about the system from my research. But you know, my opinion's also based on experience of shooting a lot of pistol silencers on pistols. I know what feels good and right and what doesn't. And this thing runs correctly. It runs correctly. You can feel it running correctly. There's something about it. There's just something about the way it pushes in its recoil. It's right. It feels right. It's just if you're a pistol shooter and you're a suppressed pistol shooter, you know when you feel it. Now the silencer piston, which is really interesting, and I have both of them. I have both pistons for the silencer, both the Mark 23 piston and the USP piston. And it's not just the threading that's different, guys. These are different piston assemblies. Okay, this isn't like the normal like circa 2020s. Let's just get another piston. It all has a different thread pitch. No, these are completely different engineered systems. And in both of those pistons, despite how different they are, for the Mark 23 being a right-handed thread and the USP piston being a left-handed thread. Despite the differences in both threading and geometry and venting and spring rate, despite all those differences, they both have the same O-ring inside to prevent unscrewing of the silencer, and it works. Okay, I can verify that. Now, can the silencer get a little loose after a mag? It can. But even when it's not tight all the way, it's not loose. It's like if that makes sense. Like, in other words, there's rotational resistance as you unscrew the silencer, and that's because of the O-ring. Okay. Now, I had greased the crap out of my O-ring, so I didn't have as much friction as I could have had. Okay. And it still stayed tight for a whole 12-round mag of 45. Okay. Even though it was greased with TW25B and a lot of it still stayed tight for a whole mag. Okay. And that's good. That's really good. And it's comforting. Oh man. And I can't tell you how comforting that is as a silencer consumer. Because no one wants to use something like Cam Lock or Easy Lock, right? What you want to be able to do is just use your normal barrel and the silencer, right? So having that having the O-ring in there to prevent unscrewing is really awesome because you can replace O-rings, right? So that's really cool. I love that. I wish more people were doing things like that. And this is old. Okay, so that's one of the reasons why people like the left hand, 13.5 millimeter by 1 millimeter left hand system, because it can work with an O-ring. And if you did it right, you could prevent it from unscrewing. Super, super great, right? But a lot of people don't make the pistons right. They don't have an O-ring in it, and it doesn't work right. And it's not sized right, and the O-rings aren't sized right, and it doesn't work. Okay, O-rings are awesome. Okay, so I'm just here to tell you, and don't take my word for it. You can read other Mark 23 owner opinions on this. They'll tell you the O-ring works. So what I am doing for that part is I am sourcing some generic replacements. Like Knights Armament, they'll sell the O-rings. I found so I had like the O-ring that came in the silencer, even though the silencer wasn't really used. The O-ring looked like it had been chewed up a little bit. So what I did was I pulled the brand new O-ring out of the USP piston for the silencer, and I measured it, and then I found the information of the Knights Armament part number online, and I found the size of the O-ring. And so what I'm going to do is I'm sourcing some generic replacements in some different materials to try. Okay, 1 second. Oh man, I needed some water there. I'm losing my voice. So I'm sourcing some generic replacements I'm going to try. So for the O-ring. So I plan on shooting the hell out of this combo. So that's what I'm going to do with that. Now, with regard to the silencer performance, first impressions, I went and I shot in the middle of a field. Okay, because I wanted to know just in the free field what was happening, and I didn't use hearing protection for the first mag. Probably not the best idea for my damaged ears. It definitely wasn't the best idea, but this is an iconic combo. I was going to do it. Okay. Don't try this at home, kids. No, it's all right. It's not super quiet, but it's not super loud. For its size, for the silencer size, which is not that big on this gun, it's pretty slick. And given the 90s technology and the size of the silencer, man, I have no doubt it's going to be an interesting test when I test it, because my ears are really shot and damaged and stuff. And I think some people are going to be surprised with the performance of the Knights Armament silencer. With the Mark 23 and this silencer, I think I would hunt with it. I think this would be a great deer setup. So I think I'm gonna do that. I think that's gonna be cool. I think I'm gonna shoot a deer with this, and it's gonna be awesome. Yeah. So another thing, the trigger on the Mark 23 is very good. It's very, very good. The sights are very, very good too. The safety's easy to use. The decocker's easy to use. But remember, it's going to slap your thumb like it owes it money. No, as is tradition, it does do that. I don't know if you guys know that when you decock a Mark 23, the decocker is going to spring back at your thumb and try to kill you. Don't let it kill you. The grip of the gun, it's shaped like a 2x4, but it is very comfortable. Surprisingly for a 2x4. I don't know. It fits my hand. If you have small hands, you might want to go USP. But if you have normal or large hands, the Mark 23's titties, you should do that. Mag release, again, standard HK. It's great. Mags are 12 rounds. Can you get more capacity in, like an FNX 45? Yeah, you can. But it's not a Mark 23, so who cares, right? I mean, 13 rounds total with one in the chamber, right? That's enough. You're good. You can carry it cocked and locked, in single action mode with the hammer back because America. So yeah, I mean that's my first look at the Mark 23 as a Mark 23 owner with the matching silencer, with having shot it. All in all, so far it's pretty sexual. I have to say. I have a USP 45 tactical on order from HK as well. Part of the characterization of the Knight's Armament silencer and the Mark 23 will involve similar characterization of the same silencer on the USP. We're going to look at different recoil dynamics and everything with the different pistons. It's going to be awesome. It's going to be very interesting test series. For now, I'm figuring out the best way to carry the gun, because I love it so much. I have a leather holster that's honestly pretty baller. I kind of like leather holsters. I know some people laugh at them. I think they're cool. I carried a HKP7 in a leather holster for years. Okay, people are like, oh, leather holster doesn't retain the gun. It retained it just fine. Okay, never fell out. I don't know. I probably won't use that leather holster a lot. Maybe I could appendix carry it. I need to talk to Lucas, have him make me a holster for the Mark 23 for appendix carry. No, I don't usually do appendix carry, but I think appendix carrying this would be just kind of cool. Yeah. I will post a photo of this gun with the podcast. It's awesome. Yeah. So stay tuned for more about it. As I have more time to tell you more, and I spend more time with the gun, you'll know. Okay. So until then, I just want to let you know it's a cool gun. Okay, topic 3 at a time of 1 hour, 2 minutes, and 26 seconds. Okay, 1 second, guys. Oh, we're going to do it. It's very late, but I just gotta keep on trucking. Topic 3, PEW Science and podcast merch. This is actually happening. Not soon, but it is happening. Someone got it for Christmas. I didn't think I was going to do this, but the way it worked out, this is crazy. Let me tell you this story. And I wanted to tell it because I thought it was so sweet. It's like, oh man, it broke my heart, man. I was just like, late last year, a woman reached out to me via email. Okay. She told me that her husband absolutely loves the podcast, and she thought it would be a great Christmas present to get him a PEW Science or the J Situation t-shirt or sticker or something, right? She was looking. She was searching everywhere on the internet. She was searching my website, and she couldn't find any merch, right? She looked. She was so dead set on getting him this type of gift that she asked if she could make a t-shirt with the logo from my website. That's how far she was going with this. What a gal. Dylan, sir, your wife is awesome. You got a good one. Don't mess that up, okay? Treat her right. Now, I told his wife, I said, hey, say no more, fam. I got you. Well, I didn't say it like that, but ma'am, if you're listening, you're very, thank you for reaching out. So Dylan is the first recipient of a PEW Science sticker pack, a bunch of prototypes I had made. They aren't for sale yet, and they're not final, but I sent him a few of every one And he is the only person outside of my household to have PEW Science stickers. So Dylan, if you are listening, I'm glad you enjoyed them, and I hope you use them in good health. Okay, I sent him a handwritten note with all that. And so Dylan, he sent me a thank you email. He did, and I'm not going to read it on the podcast because I think that's sort of weird. It's sort of a personal thing. I feel like that would betray his trust a little bit. I'm not going to do that. So suffice to say, though, he had some really good things to say about the effort and about me, and it did warm my heart to see someone who is not only getting a lot out of the data and analysis, but someone who is inspired by the effort as a whole, because he did use that word. So Dylan, consider this my sincere thank you for listening to the podcast. You are one of many listeners and also one of many individuals that has let PEW Science and the effort touch your lives and the lives of others around you. That's amazing. Also, you ended up joining PEW Science. You let me know you did that, which is pretty great. So thank you for that as well. Good luck in your endeavors and Godspeed. Okay. I hope everyone found this episode informative. SHOT Show is next week. I have something to deliver to you then, and I'll probably do a podcast next week too. It will either be a solo podcast early in the week, or I'll have some guests on it later in the week. I don't know how I'm going to do it or what I'm going to do. We'll play that part by ear. So if I don't do a podcast next week, if I don't speak with you next week, just know there will be data. Okay, no matter what, there's going to be data. So stay tuned for that next week at the very least. Okay? So stay safe out there, friends. I hope you found this episode informative, okay? If you have any questions, always email me at tech@pewscience.com. I will talk with you folks again soon. Okay, bye.